everyone.
Hello, we are here. We are queer. I am coming to you from the Emerald Isle this week.
She's on tour. She's back in the homeland.
I'm looking out on the green, green grass of home.
She's podcasting in the wild.
And I'm so excited to have 6 meetings before lunch, Fi.
Yeah, episode 18, season 1, baby. Let's go.
We are in the climax and denouement of the season, I feel. We're like coming into it.
Yeah, like we're building towards the end, and honestly, I'm thrilled. So welcome back, listeners, to Queer Gals Watch the West Wing. Leigh and I are ready and raring to just talk some absolute bollocks about this episode because I have become very obsessed with some minutiae in this episode. So it may be less about politics and more just about Gina Torres.
Amazing. I mean,
I don't think her name is Gina Torres either. I think that's a completely different... Her name is Gina. Gina. I'm obsessed with Gina.
Gina Toscano, is it not?
Yes, it is Gina Toscano.
Who's Gina Torres? Is she in...
she is just an American actress who I also enjoy.
Fine. Mm-hmm.
She's from Firefly. Okay, and that says what everyone needs to know about me, really, as a person. So, Leigh, should we just cut to the chase and just go straight into the episode recap?
Let's do it.
So, I'm going to hit you with the previously on. It's giving strong Mallory content. It's giving strong Zoey content.
We love to see Mallory pop up on the previously on. It always bodes well.
And she's frisky and free this episode, Leigh Douglas.
She is. She's feeling feisty.
She's feeling feisty. We open the episode. It is Thursday at 9:45 p.m. And Leigh, there ain't no party like a West Wing party. And there ain't no party like a party being crashed by Toby Ziegler. So it looks like it's the day that Mendoza is finally getting confirmed on the Supreme Court. And so like everyone's like looking for like fun after work party vibes. Bonnie's here.
In a phenomenal red blazer. We love bringing red into the workplace.
She's looking fine as hell. Also as a Democrat to be like going in with the red, like, let's just like redefine these things.
Do it, hon.
Ginger's there, also looking great.
I think Ginger and Bonnie are kind of establishing themselves as a dynamic duo.
I would agree.
They're of always together, I feel.
And core to Toby's team.
Yes.
But Toby does not want anyone to have fun. In fact, he is like, no one is allowed to like pop a drink until Mendoza is confirmed because we have to get the majority from the Senate.
Correct, yes.
So we have to get to 51 votes.
Correct.
Yay.
Correct.
Before like it's actually going to happen.
Correct.
Toby is he just says, in the 3 months this man has been on my radar screen, I've aged 48 years.
Haven't we all been there? We all have that person in our lives who comes in like a bowling ball and immediately ages us 48 years.
Yeah, for sure. And he's just like, Toby is just kind of like walking around the party where everyone else is like just wanting to have a nice time and relax and just like screaming, this is my day of jubilee.
I love him.
I love him and I love his energy and I love the fact that he's like, well, if I'm not having fun, no one is allowed to have fun.
None of you are going to jinx this for me.
Yeah. I kind of love him as a little superstitious girly.
Yeah. We love to see it.
Yeah, we love to see it. To Josh and Donna, how we love to open every episode. So a classic little walk and talk down the corridors with Josh and Donna because Donna has written Josh a little note because he got a phone call while he was out. And he's like, your penmanship, like your handwriting is indecipherable. To which Donna responds by saying, my penmanship is distinctive. And I love this because I have terrible handwriting. And
that is not true. That is an objective lie. Listener, it is fake news.
No, I've always been told
has stunning handwriting.
That's because I was in handwriting club at primary school.
Of course
because
you were.
I was shamed for my bad handwriting. And I wasn't allowed to use the little pens. I had to stay with the big triangular shaped pencils for ages. And Leigh,
listener, she's a Virgo. She loves her stationery.
Just heartbreaking. The amount of like coursework or like flashcards. I just redid because I was unhappy with the quality of my handwriting.
Listener can confirm the number of times that Fiona was copying out her notes in university and had to start again because of one misspelling.
Some may call it perfectionism, others may call it mental illness. We'll just leave that up for grabs. So we bump into Mallory looking insanely hot.
Just in a full kind of Matrix-esque black ensemble.
Yes, like a long coat. And she's looking for Sam, and that bodes badly for Sam because she's like definitely on the hunt for something.
She's on the warpath. Also, I discovered about the actor who plays Mallory during the week that she, I believe, originated or was famous for the role of Annie on stage in Annie as a child.
Incredible news.
Which just reads for me. It just reads for me.
It really
the journey
does.
from Annie to Mallory. Just makes a lot of sense.
I'm trying so hard to fight the urge to burst into song right now because she's not a singer. But like, I really want to scream The Sun Will Come Out Tomorrow.
Yeah.
But I'm going to hold that back. Just before we move on from Josh and Donna, the note was a message from Mandy because Mandy wants to talk about a panda bear with Josh. Is this what we've stooped to? Is this the quality of storyline that we're giving Mandy at this point? This
is a real new low point for Mandy. I mean, we're giving her literal pandas at this stage.
I can't. And the thing is, the story goes throughout the episode, so we'll come back to it. At this point, I'm furious. Back to the party. Toby has just collected all of the champagne glasses and is clutching them in his arms in order to withhold fun from people.
It is very the vibe of you doing an aggressive close of a pub. Just a hard close.
Just like taking people's drinks from them and being like, well, it looks like you finished. So
it's over. The fun is over. Go home.
Please go now. Yeah, I wish to go home. I'm not getting paid enough to deal with you chatting. You didn't want the rest of that red wine anyway. Oops, it's in the sink. Carry on. Should we discuss Josh's entrance to the party?
Yet another horrifying frat boy entrance from Josh.
Awful. He just comes in and he's like, Toby!
When will he learn that the White House is not a frat party?
When will he learn his audience? Like, Toby's not down for that.
No.
Like, at what point did he think Toby was going to turn and be like, Joshy boy, how's it going? Like, that's not what's going to happen. Look at Toby's face. He's so stressed and anxious. He's holding at least 15 champagne glasses.
I must say, actually, our deep dive today will lean into quite a lot of the importance of knowing one's audience. So that's something to keep in mind.
Thrilled. To Leo's office, and Margaret looking cute.
In a little blue ensemble. Also, we've not seen her with the hair up before. She looks like a very classy dame with that French twist.
We never see her with her hair up. And sometimes, just like, I love to see Margaret switch it up because she, as we know, she loves that flicky bob.
She loves it.
But just for her to have looked in the mirror that morning and been like, I'm going to go for something different. That's bold for her.
Yeah, we love the wanderlust.
So the reason why we're in Leo's office is there's something going on about someone having written a comment on like the dust cover of a book.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a new justice post up for grabs, and the person who's up for it like favors reparations for slavery.
Mm-hmm.
At this point, I'm not sure which particular post it is, but it feels like this is our plot A for the episode.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the party, and Sam Seaborn has arrived, and it is immediately cornered by Mallory, which is crazy bitch behavior from her.
Love her.
But we love her. And this is the exchange that happens. Would you like to be Sam or Mallory, Leigh?
I would like to be Mallory, please.
Okay, I'll be Sam Seaborn. It's my day of jubilee.
I despise you and everything you stand for.
All right, my day was a little better a few seconds ago, but that's all right.
How could you write that position paper?
Which position paper?
Don't play dumb with me.
No, honestly, I am dumb. Most of the time I'm playing smart.
Sam, listen to me.
Are you really thinking of ruining my day of jubilee by yelling at me about school vouchers?
I was considering it.
They're so hot.
It's so good.
Just fuck already, guys.
We love to see it. She's just refusing to play ball, but is also in many ways playing ball, and we love it.
Yeah. I also respect from Sam him being like, no, I am dumb. I play smart most of the time, because I think that is actually accurate for him.
Agreed.
And it shows a level of self-awareness that I didn't perhaps ascribe to him previously.
Agreed.
We are shooketh by the news that Mendoza is in. 51 votes. Yay, he's in.
A second smile from Toby Ziegler for the series. He's popping the champagne. Why am I crying? Wow.
And that is when we cut to the opening credits, Leigh. It gets me every time. When there is that just perfect, like the build of drama and then bam into the credits, like goosebumps.
Also, God love them. We've not seen them have many wins in the run of the show thus far. And so we're truly thrilled to see Mendoza where he rightfully belongs as a Supreme Court Justice.
100%. So back to Josh and Donna and their thing of the week, because they always have a thing of the week. And obviously the thing is going to be Donna's handwriting.
Yes.
Donna is in like a kind of like offshoot room at the party, kind of like drink in hand, chastising Josh. Leo arrives and asks to have a little chat with Josh. And Leigh, what is Donna's exiting line?
I'll go see if people are having fun in the other room. Such a vibe. I love Tipsy Donna. She's such a card. I love a heels kicked off moment with Donna.
She literally leaves like with her like wine glass in one hand and like her chunky heels in her other hands, just like confidently walking around barefoot.
She would be a real anchor at an office work party. Do you know what I mean? Like someone that you could confidently sit in a corner and gossip with so that you could avoid speaking to others.
Yeah, and like she'd be the person who would like low-key plan the like after party, or like me so-and-so and so-and-so, we're like going to be going getting drinks at this place. So like once we finish these drinks, we're just like going to go. I've ordered a taxi.
Yes, correct.
Brief touch base with Leo and Josh. So the person we were talking about earlier is their nominee for Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights. And the guy that their nominee is, his name is Breckenridge. And
great surname. Great
I
surname.
will just a moment for all of the made up names in this show.
So good.
So good. But he supports slavery reparations, and he wrote like a recommendation for this particular book, hence why it's on the cover of it. And Leo's like, you're my guy, you're going to go and talk to Breckenridge, Josh, and like get to the bottom of this, because like basically we really want him for this job, and we don't want him to get like to not get the job because of his position on reparations, or just to not be able to make waves because of his position on reparations.
So because he is being appointed to a federal post, he would be subject to Senate approval in the same way that Mendoza is.
Right. And so they're like, we can't get him through the Senate if he wants to speak out on this.
Yeah.
Cool. Because racism.
Correct.
Cool. And Josh is very stressed because he's like, I'm a white guy. Should I be getting into this with like a black civil rights lawyer? And I say, sit in your discomfort, Josh. Maybe you just need to go and do some reading, go and educate yourself, go and learn from this person. I think this will be good for you.
Yeah. I think it's time for Josh to confront the moment that every white person must eventually confront, which is that we've all got racism as part of our brains. And that's something to unpack and unlearn. And this is just Josh's moment to do that.
Yeah. So we'll see how that goes for him. Now, Leigh, so this party, right? Like everyone's letting loose.
Yeah.
And people keep on they keep on being like, oh, CJ's going to do the thing. CJ's going to do the jackal.
CJ's
like,
going to lip sync. Not CJ lip syncing in a pre-Drag Race era, just giving the people what they want. She is a gay icon, but also don't tease me, Sorkin. He teased me with this so much.
I know. Like, okay. I have so many thoughts. We really hype up this performance. Like people are like, oh my God, is she going to do it? Like when she does that, it's so iconic. And I always get stressed when things are overhyped.
Agreed.
Now, is it Leo that says you've got to see her do the jackal? It's basically like watching Shakespeare.
I'm not sure who says that, but I do remember that line.
I feel like it's either Leo or Josh. And either way, that's such high stakes for someone doing a lip sync performance. Meanwhile, Toby's smoking a cigar. He's still smiling. And Alison Alison Janney is lip syncing to a song called The Jackal. It may be the weirdest scene on television I've ever seen. First of all, like, it's not like a big like floor filler song. Like, it's quite a cool song.
It's very like jazzy.
Yeah. I think the song came out like in the early 90s.
So we're thinking then it would have been an anthem of CJ's 20s, do we think?
And perhaps like a bit of an anthem when they were on the campaign trail.
Yeah.
Now, all I can say is it's like a fucking fever dream. At one point, Toby is like blowing smoke rings.
Yeah, we're smoking indoors.
I know. And like everyone's like, to use a phrase to describe white people, everyone's like getting down.
And there are some people in Bartlet's administration who I'm like excited to see get down. And then there are others who should simply never get down. Case in point, Sam Seaborn.
I don't know what he's doing, and it's uncomfortable, and it's giving millionaire matchmaker DJ wicka wicka wicka. It's giving white boy DJ. Like, I can't with this episode so far. Also, once again, CJ's blow dry is insane. Her hair is so big. And everyone's just like leaning on desks, drinking wine, like up against the wall. Like, this is a smoke in the air. Like, CJ's lip syncing. We then kind of like close out that moment and just find like CJ like still like humming the lyrics to herself, just vibing in her office. And then,
do we think
Danny,
perhaps a little tipsy? I think a little tipsy.
I think a couple of glasses of wine, perhaps. And kind of Danny comes in and is like, hey, I got some information for you. And she's like kind of feeling herself and just provides like one of the most perfect and specific insults I've ever heard.
Danny, you were the president of your high school's audiovisual club, weren't you? It is such a specific and yet so perfect and effective insult to Danny.
Because it's like, you're a big old nerd, right? And then he was like, I actually wasn't the president. I was like the treasurer. Which
I was simply robbed.
But the reason she says this is because Danny was like, I was just at home listening to my police scanner. Which actually is just like, it's just very funny. But the goss is, Leigh. So Bob Arbour, who we find out is a huge Democratic fundraiser, his son, David Arbour, has been arrested at a college party at Zoey's college. And he's been arrested for drug possession. But Zoey was also at the frat party.
Dun, dun, dun.
Exactly. A little bit more flirting between Danny and CJ. I just want them to kiss.
They're the hottest love interests I've ever seen. Like, it's giving Elizabeth Bennet and Mr. Darcy. It's giving like everything that Ross and Rachel purported to be.
Oh, you're so right. For me, it's very Sally and Harry from when Harry met Sally.
You know what? You are so correct and right. Yes.
And the thing that I love about Danny and CJ is just consistently CJ being like, but I'm not interested in you. And Danny being like, but you are.
And yet somehow that doesn't feel toxic. It should feel toxic.
No, it's so playful.
Yeah.
Long may it last. Oh, hi, Mandy.
Just Mandy with a new low of irrelevant storylines here.
It's bleak. It's bleak. Like,
is Sorkin actively having a laugh at this point?
I really feel like it's doing a disservice to Moira Kelly because she's a great actor.
She's a great actor, and I just feel like she could have done something so much more interesting with this character if the writing had served her better.
Yeah, it's bleak. It's really bleak out there. And like, they do give her some funny dialogue. So a panda like has died and Mandy's like, we should get new pandas. It will help our relationship with China. Realistically, Mandy, I don't care. Like, this storyline is going to keep on coming up this episode and I will be breezing over it because I just won't engage.
Let's carry on.
To the cafeteria. We're at college, Leigh.
I love it when we're like in other places besides the West Wing. I feel like we're like on a field trip.
Yeah, like we're just at college with like Zoey and her gal pals.
Just having like a little study sesh.
just being like young and cute with like their little trays.
Also, like, can we just talk about like the glow up of Zoey? Not that she wasn't like cute from the beginning of the series, but I just love the like fashion journey she's been on since she started college. I feel like she's really found her aesthetic. She's wearing a phenomenal pair of boots with like a grey little mini skirt in this scene. She looks phenom. I love it. I love it as just like a casual day at uni look.
It's very you, Leigh. It was very you. It's very you at uni. Like,
thank you. Oh,
all of us just like wearing like sweatpants and leggings, and then Leigh would just turn up in like a really cute, like kind of like secretarial dress and knee-high boots.
Yeah, actually, listener, I did have a particular pair of kitten heels that kind of did echo on the floors of our department. And because I never did any stage management, I was like, no, I will be an actor on the stage. The stage management staff didn't know who I was, and they just identified me as Clicky Clacky because of the sound I made when I walked down the halls.
Truth. You just were, oh, there she goes, Clicky Clacky. And Leigh always walked at pace and like with many books in her arms, just like tearing it down corridors.
I also love that because Gina, the security guard, is like kind of undercover as a college student, she also has like a really hot, fun, grungy look on.
Leigh, I can't engage. I can't.
I really need like the crossover episode between the L Word and the West Wing where Gina Toscano is like Alice's love interest for the week or something.
Gina in this episode is unbelievable. Just a bit of conjecture for as they like leave. So Gina's like, oh, Zoey, we've got to go. There's like a reporter out the front, so we need to go through the back entrance. And Zoey and like her gal pal get up, and as they like walk away from the table, they like giggle and they're like, what was up with Marjorie's hair?
A moment for Marjorie's hair.
Poor Marjorie. You know, maybe she was just trying something new.
Okay, but to be fair, I mean, we were not particularly feminist in this vein ourselves in university. If you recall, we spent an entire 3 years referring to a girl as high hair girl.
That's so true.
We never learned her name.
Never learned her name. She just wore her hair so high on her head. I forgot about that. Oh my God, we're terrible people.
It wasn't a bad thing to be high hair girl. We should have learned the girl's name.
We really should have. So yeah, back to Gina. So she is wearing like a mid-thigh length black leather jacket, black jeans, combat boots, and like a loose cotton blue shirt.
In other words, she is my dream woman.
Yeah, like be still my beating heart.
It's giving Futch in like the hottest way.
I'm just gripping the wall in my house to stop. So Zoey and Gina, and also another Secret Service operative who we don't know the name of yet, but he's also there, and I think he's like Gina's number 2. I wish to know more from him because he's also hot, and I think he's from other TV. Anyway, but we get ambushed by a reporter who's like made his way around to the back entrance of the cafeteria, and his name is like Hume or something, I can't remember, but he is digging for information on the David Arbor arrest at the party. And Gina is just like such a pro. She's like, Zoey, keep walking. She then like body slams this guy into the wall. And I like fully blushed, like my chest flushed at this point. And he's like, well, if this is how the Secret Service behaves under the Bartlet administration, then it's a sad state of affairs.
To be fair,
and she just looks at him in the eye, Leigh. She looks at him in the eye and she just says, well, we'll have to learn to live with your disappointment.
I cannot imagine the idea of like, and I'm sure like it must have happened. Reporters must have tried to do this with like Malia and Sasha, the Obama daughters. But like, I cannot imagine someone doing that. And the idea of someone doing it to like, for example, Malia and Sasha is just so horrifying.
But it's a huge invasion of privacy, really, isn't it? Because like, this is the kind of the conflict of this episode is like Zoey being like, I'm nothing to do with my dad's job.
Yeah.
And like, it turns out CJ kind of trying to explain to like, but you are, because although you don't have any like skin in the game, you don't have a say in anything. You are a representative of his opinion in a way.
Yeah.
And so it's like this really tough thing because like, you're not even really an adult yet.
Yeah. It's so hard. And in many ways, I'm sure commenting on Chelsea Clinton.
Exactly. So poor Kathy. Poor Kathy, Sam Seaborn's EA, because Sam leaves his office. He has finished a piece of work on time, and people in his office are literally clapping him. And I'm not going to lie, Cassie could not be more underwhelmed. He's like, change my middle name to like such and such. And Cassie's like, what is your middle name? And he says his middle name is Norman.
Samuel Norman Seaborn, which was a really key piece of information for me.
Yeah, and just another reason why high school was tough for Sam. But yeah, Cassie has no time for him. But what I do love is that Mallory arrives and he's like, oh, like, why are you here? And she's like, I have made an appointment to shout at you.
Obsessed. I've also dressed in business attire for this formal meeting.
Like, I'm not at school today. I have made an appointment with Kathy to be angry at you about this school vouchers thing.
Although, truth be told, like, when is Mallory ever at school?
They have very strange term time at her school, is all I'm going to say. So, should we go to Josh meeting Breckenridge?
Mm-hmm.
So, the first piece of business on the agenda is that Jeff Breckenridge is hot.
Yes.
And cool.
Very clearly and immediately the alpha in the room over Josh.
Just his like body language alone. Like if that guy had been your like lecturer at university,
I would have been beside myself. Even as a gay woman, I would have been beside myself.
Yeah. We do find out that Josh's dad was also a lawyer.
Yes.
And was a lawyer was a partner at the firm that Breckenridge was like working at, interned, that's the one. That's the word I was looking for. And Breckenridge is like, oh my God, your dad was so cool. Like, how is he? And then just like, Josh is like, oh, he's dead. Just
more family deaths for Josh. But it does go, I think, to explain some of Josh's behavior throughout the season, because apparently this happened recently. Because it happened during the campaign and Bartlet has only been in office for like less than a year at this point. So Josh has lost his dad recently. And I think actually Josh, like, grieving does explain some of his more erratic behavior throughout the season to this point.
And how he's kind of always spoiling for a fight.
Completely.
We know a huge part of grief is anger.
Yeah. Bless you, Fi. I mean, with my own father's death, you remember the behaviour was erratic. It was lockdown. It was absolute chaos. So thank you for that.
No, you're always welcome. I personally am like, this also explains quite a lot as to why Josh is in therapy. It's not just the loss of Joni, but obviously possibly like working through the grief of losing his father. So like actually a very healthy move for him to be in therapy for quite a toxic man.
Agreed.
I think that this is such an interesting storyline for Josh. Like this, we kind of keep going back and forth to this meeting that he's having with Jeff. And I personally find the like reparations standpoint incredibly interesting.
I agree.
And just in the words of Jeff Breckenridge, he's like, someone owes me and my friends $1.7 trillion.
Truly, agreed.
So more on that later, but we must away to CJ and Charlie. And quite frankly, another insane exchange.
Charlie, Chaz.
A crazy way to talk to someone as they enter their office. I hate Chaz specifically for our Charlie.
He's not a Chaz. No.
He already has a fun name. He has
Charles for a formal occasion, but no.
Then Charlie just says, I heard you burned the place down last night.
Obsessed.
And CJ's like, oh, the jackal? I can bring it. What? Like, yes. Also, a fun fact about the jackal lip sync. So Alice and Jani arrived to filming. They did a take of it. And the directors were like, you need to make it less good because your performance is so good. We kind of wanted it to be a thing for CJ that was like a little bit like, kind of like, oh, she's like kind of doing it in the moment, like a little bit like rough. And basically Aniston Jani's performance of the lip sync was too polished.
I would expect nothing less.
You know that she does a lot of prep and apparently she can bring it.
Can I bring it? Yes, I can.
Exactly. So Charlie has come to CJ because he's looking out for Zoey in an extremely respectful way.
Yes, agreed.
But also like a very cute way. And this is all about him being like, look, this thing happened at this party. And I think it's going to be a story. And like, I feel like CJ, like, could you just like take some time to look at it because I don't want it to become something bad, especially because this reporter came into the college.
Yes, yes.
And it's not him being like, I'm being protective over my girlfriend. It's him being like, I don't think Zoey would know to ask for this herself. I'm not asking you to do anything in particular, CJ, but could you just check in, and then whatever decision you make,
I'm just flagging something for your attention. This is just an FAO, CJ.
Yeah, which frankly, it's just phenomenal from him. We see Carol again, CJ's EA.
I would love a lesbian subplot for Carol. She's giving me big queer energy.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like we have earned some conjecture on Carol's backstory. I think she's a gay woman.
I think she's a gay woman for sure. And I think maybe she, like Donna, is a little tragically in love with her boss.
I think she and her long-term girlfriend talk about how much of a crush Carol has on CJ.
Okay, love this. Love this. I
feel like she and her girlfriend like met working on like a political campaign.
Yeah.
Like in the office, like, you know, making phone calls and stuff. They've been together like, let's say 6 or 7 years.
Yeah.
And when she got the job working for CJ, her girlfriend was like, I can't believe you're getting to work with CJ Craig. She's so hot. And Carol's like, I know, she's the best.
Obsessed. Yeah, no notes.
Yeah, okay. Fun further conjecture, CJ once backed her boyfriend's Porsche into a pond.
Can I please get the CJ Craig prequel that we all deserve? Just of like CJ Craig's rise in politics to be press secretary.
Yeah, because
like,
every
what
story
journey has she been on?
Every story gets better and better. And in my mind, I'm like, did the backing the Porsche into the pond happen in the CJ era or in the Claudia Jean era?
I feel like it happened in the Claudia Jean era.
Correct. To Toby unnerving everyone in the White House. Would you like to be Margaret or would you like to be Toby?
I would like to be Toby, please.
Okay. Hey, Toby.
Hey there, Margaret.
Are you all right?
Of course I'm all right. Why wouldn't I be?
You don't usually say, hey there, Margaret.
What do I usually say?
You usually growl something inaudible.
Not today. You, on the other hand, should turn that frown upside down.
Excuse me?
Let a smile be your umbrella.
Okay, now you're scaring the crap out of me. And then Toby just walks off in a different direction, singing, and just being like, hi, Bobby, put a smile on that face. Hi, Janet.
And everyone's like staring at him as he walks down the corridor.
Like, that's how happy he is about Mendoza being off his desk.
He has smiled 3 times in this episode, and I love that for Margaret, this is a cause of concern.
Yeah, unbelievable. Frankly, I am unnerved by a happy Toby. I prefer him when he's grumpy.
Agreed.
Should we circle back to Mallory just like absolutely laying into Sam Seaborn?
Agreed.
Very, very quickly. So, she loves him and she hates him.
Yeah.
And we've all been there.
Agreed.
But with respect, I care not a single bit about school vouchers.
I mean, yeah, it's a basic debate about private and public schools, which like every country has, doesn't it?
Yeah. So like, I'm here for the sexy arguing. I'm not here for the content, I'm afraid, Mallory.
I love their passion. I'm not into getting into this subject today. So shall we crack on back to Hot Breckenridge?
Yeah, absolutely. Josh does some missteps here, which, you know, was probably expected.
Yeah, he does definitely kind of ride in on the white horse of defending white men, which is just not a good look.
Yeah. So he's talking to a black civil rights attorney.
And it's never good for a white man speaking to a black civil rights attorney to say, while we're on that subject of the Civil War, let's remember...
Dot.
Let's not do that.
The thing that I'm obsessed with is just Jeff lets him say it all. He's just like leant back in his chair being like, buddy, you go for it. You tell me why I'm wrong, because I'm not. Which
is why Josh is no longer practicing as a lawyer. There is a reason why he is working as a political staffer and has not had a successful career as a lawyer because...
Yeah. Jeff is just a better lawyer than you, Josh, and you need to accept it. Also, like, I confidently know nothing about many things, but especially about the American Civil War. And I know that the Civil War wasn't entirely about slavery being abolished.
Yeah, I think I might have at some point really, really gotten into the weeds of that after a couple of wines.
Possible. It's very possible. I would love to continue to revel with Toby in his day of Jubilee.
Absolutely.
And I'm also with Toby because Mandy tries to corner him, and respectfully, not even Toby, when he's happy, cares about the pandas.
No.
He says, Madeline, you're charming, you're beautiful, and for you I have all the time in the world. Bonnie, you're dedicated and you are beautiful. And Ginger, you are nice and other things. And then he's like sat down at his desk and he's like, I'm enjoying the people I work with. I've got to snap out of this. Cue Mandy being like, can you help me with this panda bear thing? And he literally, like, his face changes and he's like, oh, that did it.
Oh, it's over. I'm back in the room.
Literally, Mandy's terrible storyline ruins Toby and makes him normal Toby again. That's how shit the panda storyline is. Anyway, Zoey.
Yeah.
So, like, we find Zoey in the White House. She's, like, walking the corridors of the West Wing. She finds Charlie. And she's like, oh, hey. And he's like, hey. And she's like, oh, my God, why don't you, like, ever kiss me when you're at work? And he's like, stop it. Like, I'm not going to do that. Like, I'm
a professional.
I'm a professional. So, like, we're so close to the Oval Office and your dad is there. And then she, like, slams him into the wall and, like, kisses him up against the wall.
I love Charlie and Love.
They're so into each other. I've got goosebumps.
Young love.
Young love. Anyway, Zoe's like, oh, I'm here to talk to CJ. Like, I don't know what it could be about. She goes in and CJ cuts right to it. And it's just like, look, I know you're 19. And when you're 19, like, girls lie about stuff because we just want to, like, get something over and done with. But, like, you are in a position where you can't lie about everything. Like, you can't lie about anything. And I'm quite excited to see, like, the relationship between CJ and Zoey blossom.
Yes, I'm super intrigued about that. Also, I want more scenes with Zoey. Have we ever seen Zoey actually interact with her mum?
Maybe once.
I want a scene with Zoey and Stockhart.
I want a scene with them ganging up on Jed.
Agreed.
And him being like, these women, I can't. I think we should now go to the Secret Service headquarters.
Oh my God, Gina is at work.
Just Gina at work at a briefing, like, fuck me sideways. I'm sorry. Like, there's nothing hotter than her just being like, okay, so here's the information that I have.
Okay, but I will do you one hotter, and that is CJ and Gina in the same frame at work. The most badass thing I've ever seen. I do feel like as the series has gotten on, I will say as a side note that we are getting more into a Bechdel test passing area.
100%. Like, I think moments like that happen in every episode now. I think as soon as we got over the idea of, like, Mandy and Josh being these, like, exes that always at each other's throats, we kind of then hit passing the Bechdel test. So CJ has come to Secret Service headquarters to speak to Gina because she couldn't get any information out of Zoey. So she's like, I'm going to go and ask Gina what happened. Cue the hottest exchange ever, which is CJ being like, hey, cool. Like, can you tell me what's going on? And Gina being like, I'm sorry, like, for reasons of national security, I can't tell you that.
And also just very much being, unfortunately, like, my having my protectees trust is the only thing that allows me to do my job well. So unfortunately, I can't rat out Zoey to you.
And CJ being like, okay, that's annoying, but, like, you're being a professional. The
professional game on both sides of this argument is just so hot.
And then Gina's like, want to stay and grab a coffee? I'm about to look through an FBI photo album of teenage Nazis. And CJ's like, why? And Gina just says, I'm on a break. Obsessed. Just FYI, Mallory and Sam are still arguing about school vouchers.
Obsessed.
And CJ's like, sorry, can I borrow you for a moment, Sam? And he's like, please, that would be great.
I just need a breath. I need a beat.
Yeah. And then CJ's like, okay, so, like, I need to talk to the president about the fact that this journalist, like, was on the college campus where the press have been told to, like, leave Zoey be. And, like, he kind of, like, accosted her basically and was, like, pushing her for a comment on something. And, like, how do I talk to the president about this without him essentially going full dad, being like, I need to put my daughter in a dungeon. I am the most protective Papa Bear there's ever been. And do you know what Sam's advice is?
Get in the president's face.
Like, in what world, Sam?
Also, when has getting in anyone's face ever ended well for you or for Josh, Sam?
Never. And then CJ just turns to the room at large and is like, does anyone else have any advice? And then Sam's like, well, just don't tell him. And I'm with CJ. I would be unable to lie to Bartlet.
Yeah.
I think he can just see through anyone's poker face. But Sam's like, how do I deal with this Mallory thing? Like, she's still here. And CJ, because CJ's got game, she's like, why don't you just say that, like, let's continue the argument over lunch?
Be still my beating heart.
But like, yeah, that if I was having an argument with someone, they were like, I'm loving this, like, let's go for lunch. I'd be like, okay, bet. I've just written in our shared doc in all capitals and in bold, oh my God, Mandy, no one cares about the pandas. So my last thought, and all the time I will give the pandas, Leigh, is just this exchange with Mandy and Toby. Who would you like to be, Mandy or Toby?
I would like to be Toby, please.
I was thinking that it would be a good idea as a symbol to signal how serious we are about our relationship with China if we asked them for another bear.
I think it would be a good idea as a symbol to signal that China is serious about our relationship with us if they stopped running over their citizens with tanks.
Toby.
Mandy, call the embassy, have them send us a damn bear. What's the problem?
First of all, pandas are very rare, and there may be only 1,000 of them in China.
We only need one.
We need 2.
Why?
Because the other one will get lonely.
The other one will get lonely, then have them send us 2.
Second of all, China's not inclined to give us gifts right now.
Then get us 2 regular bears, a bucket of white paint, a bucket of black paint. Bam, bam. Next case.
It's hard to believe that the wildlife lobby was nervous about you.
I am Mr. Wildlife. I love that we're invoking the idea of Toby doing some kind of like wet t-shirt contest to be like a beauty king.
Yeah. I do think every now and then, like, Mandy does come through and like has quite a fun, fiery conversation with someone, but it's just such a dumb subject.
I know.
The thing that I do enjoy is at the end of this scene, Mandy's like, help me. And Toby's like, what? And she just says, cause Josh pain. Because he's like, why are you bothering me about these pandas? And she's like, oh, well, like, Josh told me that you were my guy about the pandas. And Toby was like, that's absolute bullshit. It's because he didn't want to deal with it. So when she says, help me cause Josh pain, Toby just smirks, giggles.
His little
and then
face lights up.
And then he's like, okay. Which I love. Now, seriously, Leigh, Mandy isn't letting go of this vouchers thing. And I think the whole thing with like her dad hating on Sam is like part of this like game. And it feels like she's really into it. And it's like foreplay that like her dad hates the guy that she's into and she kind of hates him. And I just think maybe Mallory is a kinky bitch. I
agree. But also passionate about her job. You know, 2 things can be true at once.
I don't know. And I believe that. And actually I'm really behind that.
Yeah.
In the one hand, you can be like a really, really passionate and politically motivated elementary school teacher.
Yeah.
And on the other hand, like an absolute freak in the sheets.
Yeah, agreed.
But I think it is psycho behavior to go into a person's office, make an appointment to shout at them for 2 hours, then have them ask you to lunch and you go, yeah, sure, but we'll have to ask my dad first, who, by the way, is your boss.
Yeah. And then they have to go in and see Leo. And Leo's like, why are you bothering me with this? And Sam has to say, she says she always asks her father's permission before she has lunch with fascists.
At which point, like, Leo kind of weirdly admits that he's like double-crossed Mallory because he's like, oh, yes, he wrote this, like Sam wrote this piece, but I told him to write it as like a practice to see how we could handle our opposition. So he was like pretending to be our opposition.
Yeah, like prep the opposing argument.
Yeah. And then Mallory's like, so you just stood there, Sam, and argued with me, even though that wasn't actually your standpoint? And Sam's like, yeah. Which is actually like so hot. It's so hot. And when she's like talking to him, she keeps her eyes keep like flicking to his mouth. Like they are so into each other. It's unbelievable.
Yeah, obsessed.
Shall we take a moment for CJ and Jed Bartlet?
We should, yes. And I feel like this is a big moment for their individual relationship outside of the full team.
Agreed. Where do we find Jed, Leigh?
Just in a full recline.
Just like led out on a sofa reading a book about George Washington.
Like, does he not have things to do? I didn't realize that presidents had this much leisure time.
Like, he obviously has so much to do. But I just love, like, any spare moment, just got his nose in a book.
Yeah.
Just got his nose in a book. He does start off the interaction with an unhinged comment, which is to ask CJ, do you think I could take George Washington?
Now, if we're talking history's George Washington, then yes. If we're talking Hamilton's George Washington, never.
A hard no. History's George Washington, didn't he have like all wooden teeth because all of his teeth had rotted out of his head?
That is ringing a bell, yeah.
Grim. Poor Martha having to kiss that. The question is, did they kiss with his wooden teeth in or no teeth at all?
Or just, yeah. Oh, let's...
Vile. Okay, let's move on. Now, props to CJ. She does, in fact, get in his face.
She does, yeah.
What a juicy little interaction they have.
Yeah, and it feels like a big moment of like trust building, especially because we kind of are given to believe that CJ wasn't on the campaign trail with him. She was like a new hire at the start of the administration. So this feels like a real like trust building moment.
It really does. She goes for it. He does exactly what we thought he was going to do, which is be like, call the press in right now. I got to talk to them. I got to tell them to stop bugging my daughter.
He's like CJ's ready for a full Elphaba defying gravity moment.
100%. And CJ's just like, respectfully, no, you won't do that.
No, yeah.
Because as soon as you stand up and say that, you've made a story.
Yeah.
Like, let me control the press.
Yeah.
Love it. He obviously accepts her position, but as she goes to leave, he does say, I could take George Washington, by the way. And she's just like, yes, sir. And to round out the episode, Leigh, we're going to finish by going back to Josh and Jeff. Obviously, just as kind of like over Josh at this point, Josh is like continuing to make sort of weak arguments, basically being like, we don't have the money to make the reparations. And Jeff is like, well, like you would have had the money if you'd paid then.
Yeah.
But you've continued to put it off. And so inflation means that now it is 1.7 trillion.
Yeah.
And then he just says, I'm just a civil rights expert. What do I know? Which is such an unbelievable jab.
Yeah,
but like
I love
in
it.
such a classy way. And then Josh, okay. So firstly, Josh then references his Jewishness, which we haven't heard from.
Which we've not circled back to since episode 1. We have with Toby, but not with Josh since ep 1.
And Josh is like, well, when my grandfather was released from Birkenau, like they didn't give him back his like wallet and his watch. And Jeff is like, well, with respect, it seems like your issue and your beef is with Germany. And I was like, what a very respectful way to be like, I hear your family's experience, but like it bears not complete relevance to what we're talking about.
Generational trauma is not a competition.
Exactly. We can each have our own experience.
Let's not compare generational traumas.
But a very interesting background moment for Josh's character.
Agreed, yeah.
To be the descendant of a Holocaust survivor.
Yeah.
My conclusion with this whole storyline is one, that we won't be finished with the reparations.
No, I think this is something we're going to circle back to. And I hope, much like some other characters that we've met and we've thought it was just a one episode introduction, I'm hoping that Breckenridge circles back again because I'm enjoying him as a character.
I would love a lot more of him. I think he has the actor is doing a phenomenal job of being like the most intelligent person in the room, but with zero ego, which we adore. And he kind of closes out the episode with this fantastic little speech where he asks Josh to get like $1 out of his pocket. And he says, look at the seal. The seal, the pyramid is unfinished. The seal is meant to be unfinished because this country is meant to be unfinished. We're meant to keep doing better. We're meant to keep discussing and debating. And we're meant to read books by great historical scholars and then talk about them, which is why I lent my name to a dust cover. I want to be your Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, and I'll do an outstanding job for all people in this country. You got any problem with me saying that all to the committee?
And just to preempt our moment that made us proudest to be an American in the episode, this is for sure mine.
Yeah. And that's just how we end the episode, Leigh.
It's beautiful.
Jeff just sees us out.
I love that as a vision of America.
Yeah. And being like, it's okay not to get things right.
Yeah.
It's okay to not feel like a conversation is tied up neatly with a bow.
Yeah, and I think it also just like makes me proud to be an American, to think about America as like unfinished and still in a work in progress, and something that is continuing to move forward and develop with time.
I just think it's a really healthy way to think about politics in any country.
Agreed, yeah.
Like if we're set in one way and that's the way it has to be, I just think that that's only going to breed like a sense of unease. It's just going to cause conflict. Like if something's finished, then we're not listening to each other anymore.
Agreed.
You know, I love this TV show. It's the most amazing TV show that's ever been made. Quick fires?
Agreed. Let's go.
Best fashion.
Bonnie's red blazer at the top of the episode.
Yeah, it is really hot. But what I will say is Gina in the leather jacket when she slams that journalist against the wall.
Incredible, yeah.
Honourable mention to Gina. What could a British or Irish politician never get away with? For me, it's very clear. It's that no British politician could ever ask if they could win in a fight against a previous leader of that country.
Yeah, I think if Keir Starmer were ever to be like, do you think I could take Churchill? It would all be over. It would all be over for sure.
I think even in jest in private, it's just not something we can pull off.
No.
The British, and specifically the English, I was going to say we're not a very scrappy country. Like in some ways we are quite scrappy, but like from a political standpoint, we're not scrappy.
No.
We're too scared. We feel we need to be polished.
Yeah.
How long until guns, abortion, free speech, religion, etc., big ticket items on our bingo card come up? I feel like, as we just mentioned, slavery reparations is a big one. And it's also not previously something I'd heard about before I watched this episode.
Oh, interesting, really?
Yeah. I mean, we learnt very little about American politics in the English school system. So it wasn't something that I'd learned at school. So I'm going to go away and read up about it. Man, I feel like a man.
I could take George Washington.
Yeah, 100%. That's it, isn't it?
Yeah.
I would like to give an honourable mention to This Is My Day of Jubilee.
Agreed, yes. Although that feels more gender neutral to me.
But that's because it came out of the mouth of Toby Ziegler.
Agreed, yeah.
And so therefore it's just inherently not like masculine to the point of being overly masculine.
It's not chauvinist, is what we're saying.
Yeah, it's Ziegler sexual.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we already know our moment that made us proudest to be an American.
And that is just Jeff Breckenridge's like final thoughts. That is his closing argument.
The pyramid is unfinished.
I want to be your Assistant Attorney General for Civil Rights, and I'll do an outstanding job for all the people in this country. You got any problem with me saying all that to the committee? Bam. Mic drop. Stunning. No notes. Finished. What an episode.
Agreed. Okay.
What are we going to learn, Leigh? I'm ready for some knowledge.
Yeah, I'm also very excited. Today we are going to dive into the lifetimes and political career of a woman called Jen Psaki, who was the original press secretary for President Biden.
Okay, cool. Let's learn about Jen.
So in her 20s, she became a press staffer during Obama's first presidential campaign.
So does that mean that she would have just been like one of CJ's team?
Yes, but during the campaign, he was not yet in the West Wing at this point. So she was on the campaign trail with him in like a lower level press staffer position.
With you.
And she remained on in that capacity once he came into the White House in 2008. And she says, the first few years I worked for Obama, from the campaign to the White House, I was nervous every time I was expected to talk in his company. I became paralyzed by the fear of saying something stupid or inappropriate in front of him. As a result, I would try and blend into the back of the room and hope he wouldn't ask me a question. I would even suggest others go in my place to meetings he'd be attending. That fear was exhausting. Every day I was trying to navigate my job and daily responsibilities while also handling my insecurity and nerves about interacting with my boss. I couldn't picture myself having a substantive role in those meetings. I couldn't even envisage what I would contribute. I believe they call this imposter syndrome. My solution at the time was to throw myself into being a team player. I sent detailed notes to my direct bosses so that they could be prepared for meetings, and I volunteered to call back reporters on their behalf if they were busy. I didn't speak up or question much. I worked long hours and developed a reputation for being one of the most organised and calm members of the team. But that deference didn't exactly position me as someone who could strategically drive an agenda or who could grow into a much bigger role. Feeling stalled and worn out, I left the White House in 2011. I'm reading here from her book, Say More, Lessons from Work, the White House and the World, which just came out in like the last couple of months. And she actually interviewed for the role of press secretary before she left the White House in 2011. But she says in her book that she was like 32 and working as a deputy communications director. So was Sam Seaborn at this point in her career.
Okay, cool.
And she said basically when she originally interviewed for the press secretary role with President Obama, she basically had no business getting the job. And she was kind of well aware of that, but she wanted to interview for it to build more of a connection with President Obama and hopefully make a case for herself that maybe it was a job that she could do at some point in the future. Yes, she says, I had been in politics my entire adult life, but my adult life had not been that long. So yeah, I think she went for the interview, but was like, there's absolutely no way I'm going to get this job. But just kind of like walked out of the interview being like, I feel relieved. I held my own in a conversation with Barack Obama.
And that's so fair.
Yeah. And she said like the night before, she like barely slept. She was trying to think about ideas about what they could do differently with the role, but she felt kind of ridiculous making those kinds of suggestions to President Obama. I think she was just really overawed by him being like, he genuinely is like kind of a genius and I'm a 32-year-old staffer.
Yeah, I think it's so easy to feel like that, especially sometimes when people say imposter syndrome. I would, in the words of my therapist, actually sometimes that's just misogyny or ageism.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the way that she's explaining imposter syndrome is actually its real meaning, which is you're working with someone who's incredibly charismatic, incredibly intelligent, and very diligent, and someone who time and time again we hear like asked questions of his staff and we're like, what do you think about this? And I think that would be really easy in that space to feel overawed by Obama as an individual, and feel an insane pressure to be like, I have to be good enough to live up to this person who wants to see the best in me.
Yeah, absolutely. And she does say in her book that he would often seek out the opinion of the quietest person in the room, which I find really interesting. But I think it's also tough to kind of make a transition like that when you've been working for someone since you were in your early 20s, because it's difficult to kind of like make that leap, I think, when staying in the same position.
And I think that will be really interesting as this show goes on with like for the West Wing, like when what we see with characters like Donna, for example.
Absolutely. And Charlie.
Yeah, as we get further into the Bartlet administration. And I'm assuming into a second term. Who knows?
So she then left and worked in the private sector for about a year. But during that time, because she just left a job as Deputy White House Communications Director, she was asked to do a lot of TV spots during that time to kind of comment on what Obama was doing as like a former White House insider.
Right.
And that went really well. And that kind of like got people's attention who were still in the West Wing. And basically she was asked to come back to Obama's re-election campaign as the primary on-air spokesperson for the campaign.
Ooh, that's a really interesting job.
Yeah, so she said, right before I started, I called Robert Gibbs, who had been the White House press secretary during the first 2 years of the first term, worried about working side by side with Jay Carney, someone whom I had long admired, because Jay Carney was the White House press secretary at this point. So as White House press secretary, he was not able to comment on the campaign.
Right. Okay.
So she was being the campaign spokesperson. So they were having to kind of double up, if that makes sense. I was worried that Obama saw me as an obedient junior staffer and not someone he could rely on for strategic or press advice. And given how I'd attempted to blend into the scenery last time I'd worked for him, he wouldn't be wrong to do so. I asked Gibbs how I could shift his perception of me and establish myself as the person who deserved to be the one briefing the president for political interviews and public engagements on the road. How could I possibly see myself as equipped to give the president feedback? Gibbs's advice has always stuck with me because it was so simple and delivered with a hint of his trademark Southern drawl. Act like you belong there, he said, because you do, and at a certain point, everyone else will believe it too.
It's really sound advice.
It's really good advice. And this job was really what put Jen Psaki on the map, because they did something quite innovative in that her and Jay Carney, the press secretary, did joint briefings throughout the campaign, which wasn't usual, but it meant that she was basically standing next to the press secretary, like on Air Force One through the campaign. And he was talking about giving briefings to the press corps, and he would be giving the briefing on like Obama's policy agenda, and she would be commenting on the campaign itself. And
Right.
it came to be called the Jen and Jay show by the press.
That's fun.
Which is really fun. She then, when Obama was ultimately reelected, she went to work as the spokesperson for the Secretary of State from 2013 to 2015. So for our UK listeners, that's like, she was the spokesperson for the foreign minister, basically, which at this time was John Kerry. And it was seen as kind of a like career risk for her because she didn't have a huge foreign policy background. She says, while the wider public hadn't heard from me very often, what I said as the spokesperson for the State Department would be scrutinized by important people around the world, politicians and leaders and staff in global capitals. Foreign leaders regularly called Secretary Kerry to inquire or even complain about something I had said in a briefing, not because I was wrong, but because they had received the message we were sending loud and clear. It required a lot of specific knowledge. My silent mantra on my first day of that job was, don't start a war.
Do you know what? Fair.
Yeah.
Like, I keep forgetting, like, because we're so used to seeing the faces of the politicians that we see a lot of the time, especially in, you know, like British politics, but in a lot of American politics at the moment, the people who are in the news and stuff, they're so much older.
Yeah.
And so it's mad when you're like, okay, but the people who are like on the ground doing so much of the workload for these people as part of their teams are like are our age.
Yeah.
Like in their 30s. And that is crazy because Leigh, sometimes I cry when I have to wash my hair. Like this is like, honestly, I'm like, do I have cereal this morning or do I have toast? She's just trying not to start like a global like moment of conflict on her day-to-day basis. Maybe I need to get a grip. Anyway, continue.
Mental health is real. Mental health is public health. So the press secretary job did come up again during the Obama administration, and she was kind of tapped for it and was really disappointed when she didn't end up getting it. But ultimately, she finally did get the press secretary job when Joe Biden was elected.
And by that point, like very seasoned person in the West Wing. So like actually kind of like the best time for her to have that role.
Totally. Although by this point she did have 2 small kids. So when she signed up to do the press secretary role, she essentially said yes to Joe Biden, but said, I can only make that sacrifice from my kids for a year.
I think that's very like what a great boundary to have to be like, they're really young, but when they get to the age that I don't want to be missing stuff.
Yeah, exactly. So she says of her first day of being White House press secretary, it was one of the most important days of my career. On January 20th, 2021, Joe Biden was being sworn in as the 46th president of the United States, and I was about to start my job as White House press secretary. We pulled up the inauguration on our phones to watch Joe Biden take the oath of office. The White House press secretary would typically attend the inauguration, but there had never been a press briefing on inauguration day before, and I needed to prepare. I would be giving my first briefing as press secretary that night during prime time. We were realizing that part of the reason there had never been a briefing on inauguration day before was due to logistics. One funny detail about working at the White House is that until noon on inauguration day, the previous president and their team occupy the building. So with the possible exception of some national security staff, I and the rest of Biden's senior officials were locked out until 12 p.m. I would be going live just 7 hours later. The COVID-19 pandemic was still raging, so we were all wearing masks. While we had been doing regular practice briefings for weeks, most of them had been on Zoom due to security precautions downtown. Because, of course, at this point, we're like but weeks from January 6th.
Yeah.
Stepping up to the podium on live television was going to be different from answering questions over a computer screen balanced on a pile of books from my house in my slippers. The afternoon was a whirlwind. I spent too long trying and failing to log into my new work computer and opening cabinets and closets in disbelief I was moving into the press secretary office. Then I had a meeting in the Oval Office with a group of the president's senior advisors to discuss how I would characterize the events of the day in my evening briefing. The rest of the afternoon was a blur. I only had brief moments to feel anxious about what I'd have to do that evening. I was as prepared as I could be. I knew my message, my audience, and most importantly, what I was going to wear. An old blue J. Crew dress that I had pulled from my closet, which I will just interject to say, I think it is an underrated trick in life when you have a big event that you're like very nervous about to not actually wear something new, but wear something tried and tested. Because you never know what issues are going to arise when you're wearing something for the first time, something that might slip or might be too tight. It's very, very wise from her. The briefing was being aired live by many networks, so we wanted to be on time. We didn't want to keep the press corps or the American people waiting. Before we walked into the briefing room, my deputy, Corinne Jean-Pierre, and I took a quick moment to shake out the nerves with a little shoulder shimmy before we opened the blue sliding doors. Then we walked out onto the podium. According to official White House record, I began the briefing at 7:06 p.m. Pretty good for having entered the building at lunchtime.
It's pretty impressive. Like, I think what this show is putting into sharp relief for me is like, we see through the news, I guess, like 5% of what's actually happening. Maybe not even that. And like all the people doing like full-time, like huge, like 80-hour weeks.
Yeah.
Just trying to keep stuff running.
Totally. She had an even bigger role, I feel like, coming in as Biden's first White House press secretary, because she was trying to reset the relationship between the White House and the press from what it had been. Because Sean Spicer, who was Donald Trump's first press secretary, kind of immediately started his tenure as press secretary with a lie by claiming, despite all visual evidence and statistics, that Trump's inauguration had been the largest audience to ever witness an inauguration, period.
Yeah.
Which was just factually not true. So there was a relationship of animosity and distrust between the press and the Trump White House from day one. So she had so much more work to do to kind of reset that. And she also, because she was new to the Biden team, she had a lot of work to do, which we've kind of seen CJ having to do, I feel like, in the show, to gain she had to establish her credibility as being close to Biden, as being someone who had Biden's ear. Because as press secretary, if the press don't believe that you're in the president's inner circle, they're not going to listen to what you have to say, basically.
No, not a bit.
She also speaks quite a lot about her preparation. She did like mock press briefings before she started the job. It's all really interesting, like everything from like, I'm going to practice stepping up to the podium in heels to like, I'm going to practice flipping through the press briefing book so that I know what it feels like and I can know what the tabs are. And she says that she had various like ex-colleagues and friends play the roles of different news outlets so that she could practice kind of like interacting with the different personalities that would be in the press briefing room. And she says, at times I was too serious and stoic, at others too jovial and silly. But over the course of these mock briefings, I was able to fine tune my style, both because of the nuanced discussion and feedback I got from my colleagues and because I was simply practicing doing the same thing over and over again. I was able to notice when particular behaviors or aspects of my performance started feeling less like things I needed to do consciously or keep in mind, and more like natural expressions of myself in the role of White House press secretary. And she did actually end up developing a real reputation for having a very specific tone and energy as press secretary. People referred to them as sake bombs when she would just like absolutely kind of have like a mic drop moment with the press. She also talks about like having an absolutely panicked moment with her husband the night before the first press briefing, being like, going over everything she might be asked about in the first press briefing and being like, oh my God, what if I don't know enough about Venezuela? And her husband just being like, I think the odds of you being asked about Venezuela on Inauguration Day are like relatively low. I think we're fine. She also talks about absolutely fascinating, just like her daily schedule as press secretary and how she would sift through all of the information of the news of the day to try and focus in on what it was feasible for her to research between when she woke up in the morning and when she'd be then meeting with President Biden to talk about priorities, and then when she would actually be giving the press briefing. It's just like so interesting the way that she kind of distills and focuses all of that information down while also being like, oh yeah, like I'm on my exercise bike at 6 a.m. My kids have their coloring books next to me, and then I'm like reading articles on my iPad while I'm on the exercise bike, and then I'm listening to podcasts while I'm having like a cup of coffee in the shower, and then I'm getting to work for 7:45. Like, it's just insane.
That's not me. That's just not me. Not the early mornings. Don't mind an early morning, but no. I'm going to leave that to Jen.
Yeah.
Because she's clearly an absolute boss at it.
Yeah.
And I'm not surprised when, because I feel like you're coming to a lot of these sessions with information from people's autobiographies or books that they've written. And when there is any discussion about work ethic, I am never surprised by how hard these people work.
Yeah. For sure.
I think the level of respect that I have for what that job is just climbs exponentially, because I'm like
100%.
Well, it makes sense. Of course, you have to get up at 6 a.m. every day and like be reading the news and be prepping and then like ready to go at 7:45 and then coming home 12 hours later and then like putting your kids to bed. Like, of course, you're having to do that. But like the ability to do that for such a long period of time. And I know that we've discussed in previous weeks about like burnout in the West Wing and how that's a very real thing. I don't think we're going to see burnout in our TV show. Which is a shame, because it feels like actually that's kind of the only way to exist as a staffer in American politics.
Yeah, 100%. And the one thing also that I think is really interesting, like looking at CJ too, is she talks about aggressively seeking feedback. Which I love as a phrase. And she talks about like when things would go wrong. And she says, if I blew it at a White House press briefing, I would start our staff meeting afterward by saying something like, well, I screwed up that answer, so let's talk about how we can fix it. Or, I'm sorry, guys, that wasn't my best. Let me know how I can help make sure that reporters have what they need. Or, I owe you lunch for the cleanup you're going to have to do on that one. I wanted my team to know that I recognized when I had made a mistake, and in doing so, I reframed the feedback process. No one would feel awkward about breaking it to me that I'd whiffed it at the podium because I'd opened up the forum for honest feedback by criticizing myself.
I think it's so important.
I just think it's like so fascinating and I'm not saying that men can't do this, but I'm just saying I think it is a feminine skill that some men do also have, to own missteps and mistakes and acknowledge them and not have an ego about it and just say, okay, I can acknowledge what just happened. Where do we go from here, guys? I'd love your thoughts. And just the kind of humility of that, I think I really value in public servants.
Yeah, because it's not present for everyone.
Yeah. But yes, Jen Psaki continues to kill it. She now has her own cable news show where she kind of runs through the politics and news of the week. So she has left politics, I think. She's kind of served her time in the political sphere.
Definitely. Yeah. And what, over it, probably altogether around a decade?
Yeah. I think, well, probably closer to 2, actually. But yeah, I would highly recommend her book, Say More. I really enjoyed reading it. It has a lot of kind of fun history of her own career in politics, working with John Kerry, with Barack Obama, with Joe Biden. But it also just has, because obviously she's an amazing communicator, being White House press secretary, it also has some really interesting and valuable advice, which I feel like I'm going to take into my own life, about how to have difficult conversations and communicate effectively with people, even if you're not someone who like has to do a ton of public speaking, but just like about approaching difficult conversations. And I really, really valued and was interested in her perspective on that. So I would really highly recommend the book. I really enjoyed it.
Yeah. Great sesh, Leigh.
Amazing.
I feel invigorated with the dynamism of Jen.
Yeah. Also, we love the journey from like imposter syndrome. I'm scared to speak in front of Barack Obama because he's such a genius, to being someone who's like, okay, I'm going to be the press secretary immediately after the Trump administration. And I'm going to completely try and reset the whole relationship dynamic between the West Wing and the press corps. Like, what a job and what a legacy.
Yeah. Just women, Leigh. We do get stuff done.
Agreed.
Not all the time, but a lot of the time we do.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, I mean, I already loved CJ, but I feel like now I have like more of an understanding about how it would be to like come into an already established team into that role.
Absolutely.
Here's to Claudia Jean.
Here's to Claudia Jean. Here's to Jen. And here's to Corinne Jean-Pierre, who got a brief mention there, who then did step up into the role of press secretary herself when Jen Psaki left.
Yeah.
We love to see it.
We do love to see it. Well, I think I'm going to go and, walk the streets, ring a bell, shout about how much I love women.
Yeah.
Maybe think on my deep love for Gina.
Yeah, absolutely. I think also, having just thought about Jen Psaki's schedule as press secretary, I'm immediately going to go away and have a cup of coffee. So
Yeah. I was like, why do I feel so tired? It's because I've just listened to how busy someone else was. I'm so bad for that. When people are like, I did this. And I'm like, I need a nap. But hey, should we meet up and do this again next week?
Let's absolutely do that. Let's just all take some time to reflect about Marjorie's hair and stay calm and just find a great leather jacket. Well, pleather, let's say.
Leather jacket, slam some men against some walls, get some shit done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Have some fun, hot arguments.
I feel argumentative. Okay, Leigh, I'll see you next time.
See you next time.
Love you, bye.
Love you, bye.